Hey Ron, welcome to a special episode of Custom Spray Mods. It's special to me because I'll be working on this car. Check it out. This is the 1939 Packard 2-door, 8-cylinder convertible. It looks like the kind of car Mr. Miyagi would have.
Banzai, Danielson!
Hey, Banzai!
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 Banzai! Now, my dad's had this for about 30 years. Pretty rare in Australia, but they're big in America. An old car company that, well, they don't make cars anymore, but back in their day, they were the guts. Their cars were the best. Only the rich people drove Packards. Started off, James Packard, bought a car from Winston Motor Company, and it broke down. Couldn't get it to work.
You've tried it on just once too often! Right time and time again! This is it! I'm gonna give you a...
He gave his ideas to Winton, but he said, mate, make your own car. So him and his brother did. That's what started the Packard Motor Company. About 1899, their first car rolled out, and they kept going. They built awesome cars. This thing, probably the smoothest car I've ever driven. They say you can put a penny on the motor and it won't fall over. That's how smooth it is. My dad had it sitting in the garage for about 20 odd years. Finally, I was getting married and I asked him if he could get it restored to use as my wedding car, and he did. Me and my wife drove away from the church in this thing with the top down. Pretty cool. The only thing, come look at it a few years later, there's a huge scratch on the back. I'm gonna fix that now. Check it out. As you can see, there's a deep scratch in the car and that's not gonna buff out. I need to sand it. This is acrylic paint, so I'm going to repair it in 1K acrylic. Basically, that's what they used in the 80s. So yeah, this car was painted in 1K acrylic. I'm going to repair it in 1K acrylic. I'm going to mask up the car. I'm going to use some 150 grit, dry sandpaper and a block, sand that scratch completely out. Now it seems I have to go straight back to the metal because this scratch is really deep. So I'll sand it with 150 grit, then 240 grit, then I'm going to sand it with 800 grit around the repair area. Then I'll be ready for some primer. I've also realised because we had to sand so far down, we had to put a bit of body filler in there to bring that level of paint back up. So I've wiped in some body filler, I'm ready to sand it, then I can put some primer down. Going to use some 1K etch primer because there's a bit of metal. We'll put that over the repair, then I'll spray some spray putty. I'm going to spray 3 coats of spray putty, waiting 10 minutes between coats. And a spray guide coat, then leave that spray putty overnight. We'll come back the next day, sand it with some 240 grit dry sandpaper, then I'll be ready for some more primer. Spray another 2 coats of 1K etch primer over the job, waiting 10 minutes between coats. Then I'll leave it overnight again, come back, sand it again. Now I'm going to sand it with 400 grit wet sandpaper, then sand it again with 800 grit wet sandpaper. I'm going to use some grey Scotch-Brite and scuffing paste and scuff the rest of the panel and scuff to the edges where I'm going to blend that clear into the existing paint. Because this is acrylic, I can blend it in, it'll melt back together, and eventually I can buff it and you won't see any lines from the clear. Now that I've sanded my primer, I've gone to VG Auto Paints and I'm going to get the colour matched. I'm going to match the colour, then I'm going to spray out a sample, hold it up to the car, make sure I'm completely happy with how that colour looks when it's been sprayed out. Now I'm ready to go. I'll thin the colour out 50-50. For the colour, I'm using a 1.8mm spray gun. That's a gravity feed. I'm going to use 35 psi and set up my gun handspan when it's a handspan away from the job.
Alright, let's do this.
Spray it over the repair. Get a little bit bigger with each spray. Try not to spray too far with that paint because I don't want to have that paint go over my sanded area. Don't forget, wait 10 minutes between coats and about 3 coats of colour. Now I'm ready for my clear coat. I'm going to mix the clear 1 to 1.5. So that means 1 part clear, 1.5 parts thinner. I'm going to use acrylic thinner because that dries a bit slower. Now I'm ready to spray my clear. I'm going to spray 3 to 4 coats of clear, waiting 10 minutes between coats. And on my last coat of clear, I'll spray right over to the area that I sanded and a little bit extra. Now I'm going to tip out that clear. I'm going to put straight acrylic thinners in the pot. Then I'm going to spray the edges of my blend where I finished my clear coat, and that's going to help the clear melt into the existing finish.
Now I've left the clear dry for 3 days. I'm ready to start buffing. I'm going to mask up some rubbers and a few areas that I don't want the compound to get onto. Then I'll start sanding it. As you can see, the clear is not very glossy at the moment. It does look quite shiny, but it's not as good as the rest of the car. The clear coat needs to be sanded, so I'm going to use 1200 grit wet sandpaper and a block. I'm going to wash the panel down first, then I'll use water and a sandpaper and get that clear nice and smooth. Here is a great example of the sandpaper doing its job. You can see the glossy little dots here, and here I've sanded it nice and smooth and there's no glossy dots. That means it's going to be a dead flat finish. We're not sanding the clear off, we're just taking off the top layer and getting it nice and smooth. I'm going to use Septo and Mr. Buff compound. Now this is specially designed for acrylic, it's been around forever and it's just what we need to get this clear nice and shiny. I'm going to dab a few dots on here, use a woolen buff pad and a rotary machine, and just keep buffing until that clear becomes nice and shiny. So the clear coat is looking really good right now, but there's a few swell marks that I can still see in the clear coat. So I'm going to use a waffle pad and some swell removing compound, then I'm going to buff it again. Now this compound is just very fine and it provides a finer cut which is going to get rid of those very fine scratches in the clear coat. I'm going to go over it 3 or 4 times, and that'll get it looking nice and smooth and scratch free. I also like to use my dual action polisher just to give it an even finer cut, which will, get those very fine scratches out and make this job looking like glass. Now I'm going to apply the Auto Finesse Power Seal Paint Sealant. It's going to put a layer of protection on the paint, which will protect it from the elements. It will also give it a deep gloss look. This kind of paint sealant will generally last for about 2 years, then you just need to reapply it.
Well, there you go. I had a big scratch in the back of this old Packard, so I rubbed it back, put a bit of filler in there to build up the level of paint, put some primer, spray putty, more primer, sanded it down, sprayed the colour, blended the colour, then sprayed the clear and blended the clear, then left it for a few days, gave it a cut and a buff and a polish and applied some paint sealant, and now it looks good as new. So yeah, there you go. The car is all done. I've also gone over, buffed the whole car, and applied a paint sealant. You can check out that video. I'll put it up here very soon. Other than that, this car is nice and mint. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Custom Spray Mods. Also check out our website, customspraymods.com.au, and Facebook, Instagram, @customspraymods. You can get some cool stuff there. Don't forget, leave us a comment, share the video, tell us what you think. I probably don't do the things the same way you might do them, but the job still looks awesome. It's time to take it for a drive.